The story begins 8 hours earlier at Incheon International Airport in South Korea. A suspicious-looking man named Ryu Jin-sok is wandering around the terminal. He approaches the ticket counter and asks the receptionist a very strange question. Which flight today has the most passengers? The receptionist politely refuses to answer, explaining that passenger information is private and against airport policy. Ryu doesn't accept this answer. He becomes aggressive, raises his voice, and even insults the woman before walking away angrily.
그런 식으로 기준 마세요, 제발. 걸레 같은 게 이씨.
Not far from him, a man named Park Jae-hyuk is waiting in line with his young daughter Soo-min. The little girl tells her father she needs to use the bathroom and walks off by herself. When she arrives at the restrooms, the women's line is extremely long with many people waiting. Not wanting to wait, Soo-min decides to sneak into the men's bathroom instead, thinking it will be much faster. Inside the men's bathroom, something extremely disturbing is happening. Ryu Jin-sok is standing alone at the sink with blood dripping from under his arm. He takes out a small blade and makes a careful cut inside his armpit. Then he pulls out a tiny capsule and inserts it deep into the wound beneath his skin. After placing it inside, he stitches the cut back together with thread and applies a bandage to cover the wound. Just as he's finishing this horrifying procedure, he suddenly hears a small noise coming from one of the toilet stalls. Someone is inside watching him. Ryu slowly approaches the stall with a threatening look on his face, ready to confront whoever is spying on him. But before he can open the door, Park Jae-hyuk suddenly bursts into the bathroom, calling out loudly for his daughter. Soo-min quickly runs out from the stall where she was hiding and goes to her father. The two of them leave the bathroom together, completely unaware of how close they just came to serious danger. Outside the bathroom, Park is gently applying medicinal ointment on Soo-min's arm. She has a skin condition called eczema that causes rashes and blisters on her skin. While he's taking care of her, Ryu Jin-sok suddenly approaches them with a smile. He tells Park that Soo-min is adorable, but then starts asking very personal and inappropriate questions about Park's wife and their family. Feeling extremely uncomfortable with this strange man, Park quickly pulls his daughter away and they walk off together. Ryu watches them leave with an intense stare. When he overhears them talking about going to Hawaii, he immediately goes back to the ticket counter. Without any hesitation, he purchases a ticket for the exact same flight they're taking.
하와이에서 돌아오시는 건 언제로 해드릴까요?
그냥 가는 것만 해주세요. 원웨이.
Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a police officer named In-ho is at home with his own daughter. She mentions casually that her mother is going on vacation to Hawaii with her friends. Soon, all of their lives will become connected by one terrifying flight. At the police station, In-ho arrives for his shift just as a new report comes across his desk. A group of kids has uploaded a disturbing video online showing a man threatening to attack an airplane. Most of the other officers at the station dismiss it immediately as just another prank by teenagers seeking attention online. But something about the video deeply bothers In-ho. He has a bad feeling that won't go away, so he decides to investigate it personally instead of ignoring it. In-ho drives to the address mentioned in the report to learn more about the situation. When he and another officer arrive at the apartment building, they notice the front door is slightly open. A terrible, rotting smell immediately hits them as they approach the entrance. Carefully, In-ho pushes the door open and steps inside the dark apartment. What they discover inside is absolutely horrifying. There's a human corpse wrapped tightly in plastic lying in the corner of the room. Tell me the time and country you're watching from. The entire apartment is quickly sealed off with police tape as forensics teams arrive to investigate. They begin searching through every corner of the place for evidence and clues. When the autopsy results come back from the lab, they reveal the cause of passing was poison of some kind. But that's not even the most disturbing discovery they make. The investigators find dozens of video recordings hidden throughout the apartment. The videos show disturbing experiments being conducted on laboratory rats using a strange powder substance. In each recording, the powder is introduced to the caged rats. Within just a few minutes of exposure, the animals start coughing up blood violently from their mouths. Then they collapse and pass away one by one. Every single rat that gets exposed to the substance has the exact same horrifying reaction. The forensic team runs extensive tests on the powder and confirms their worst fears. It contains a highly dangerous frozen virus that spreads extremely fast through the air. Even more alarming, the dead man they found in the apartment tests positive for the exact same virus strain. This means he was infected before he passed away. Back at the airport, Ryu Jin-sok goes through the security checkpoint with his luggage. A security staff member questions him about a strange metal object that appeared on the X-ray scan of his bag. But Ryu calmly explains it's just his asthma inhaler that he needs for breathing problems.
천식 때문에.
The security guard accepts this simple explanation and waves him through without doing any further inspection or checking. Meanwhile, the 3 pilots assigned to the Hawaii flight are finishing their pre-flight checks and preparations in the cockpit. The main pilot is Captain Han, the co-pilot is Choi Hyun-soo, and there's another backup pilot named Jang. One by one, all the passengers begin boarding the plane through the gate. Among them are Ryu Jin-sok, Park Jae-hyuk, Little Soo-min, and In-ho's wife who's heading on her vacation. Once everyone is seated and buckled in properly, the plane takes off smoothly into the clear sky. As they reach cruising altitude high above the clouds, the flight attendants begin their service routine, offering meals and drinks to all the passengers. Park nervously asks for some alcohol because flying makes him extremely uneasy and anxious. He doesn't like being in the air.
우리 아빠 비행기 무서워해.
에이 숨나.
그래서 자꾸 술 마시는 거 무서워서.
에이 그런 말이 어딨어. 어른이 누가 비행기를 무서워.
In the bathroom, Ryu Jin-sok locks the door behind him for privacy. He carefully removes the bandage from his armpit and pulls out the capsule he had hidden inside his body earlier at the airport. Breaking it open, he extracts the deadly substance inside and places it into his so-called asthma inhaler device. But it's not really an inhaler at all, it's actually a spray container. He begins spraying the deadly virus all over the small bathroom space, making sure to cover his own mouth and nose with his hand while doing it to protect himself. When Ryu exits the bathroom, he sees Soo-min standing in line waiting to use it next. But before she can enter, another male passenger cuts in front of her, saying it's urgent and he really needs to go right now. As the man rushes inside, Ryu leans down close to Soo-min and whispers something absolutely terrifying into her ear. Then he quietly returns to his seat, leaving the confused and frightened little girl standing there. Inside the contaminated bathroom, the man who just entered starts feeling very uncomfortable. He notices strange powder particles floating in the air and falling down on him from above. Feeling concerned, he immediately informs a flight attendant about the situation.
네.
화장실 말이야. 비즈니스 쪽에 사람 있어갖고 이코노미 쪽 갔더니만 위에서 뭐가 자꾸 떨어져.
She comes quickly to investigate and begins wiping down all the surfaces with cleaning cloths, having absolutely no idea that she's being exposed to a deadly virus with every single breath she takes in that small space. Back in his seat, Park glances over at the passenger sitting next to him who is watching something on his phone screen. It's a video that's gone viral online, the same clip of a man threatening to attack an airplane. Park's heart nearly stops beating when he looks closely at the man shown in the video. He looks exactly like Ryu Jin-sok sitting just a few rows away. A terrible, sinking feeling settles deep in Park's stomach as he realizes something very wrong is definitely happening on this flight. Frantically, Park searches through the cabin for his daughter. When he finally finds Soo-min, he grabs her hand tightly and rushes to find the flight attendants. He shows them the viral video playing on his phone and explains in an urgent voice what he witnessed earlier in the bathroom. How Ryu had a fresh surgical wound under his arm and how he whispered something terrifying to Soo-min. Park tells them his daughter's exact words that Ryu spoke. Everyone on this plane is going to die.
아저씨가 뭐라 그랬어?
우리 여기 있는 사람들 다 죽는다고.
The flight crew members are visibly shaken and concerned but also unsure about what to do in this situation. Is it really the same man from the threatening video? Without being completely certain, it's difficult to take drastic action. The chief flight attendant approaches Ryu's seat professionally and politely asks to see some form of identification. Ryu hesitates for just a moment but then hands over a business card from his wallet. He claims to be a scientist traveling to Hawaii to attend an important professional conference. The attendant shows the business card to Park, but without concrete proof or evidence, there's really not much they can legally do at this point while flying. Meanwhile, back on the ground in Korea, In-ho and his police team have been working frantically to identify the man in the threatening video. They finally get a match. His name is Ryu Jin-sok. When they quickly check the airline flight records in the system, their absolute worst nightmare is confirmed. He's already on board a plane that's currently flying through the air toward Hawaii. In-ho's heart drops straight into his stomach when he realizes something even more terrible. His own wife is a passenger on that exact same flight. Without wasting even a single second, In-ho storms into the airline control center and demands urgently that they turn the plane around immediately and bring it back.
여기가 항공사인데 회항 안 됩니까? 회항? 여기 항공사잖아. 회항 안 되냐고.
But the airport staff calmly tells him it's not that simple at all. The plane is already flying over international airspace now, and there are very strict protocols and procedures that must be followed. They can't just turn around a commercial flight without getting proper authorization from multiple government agencies and countries. Back up in the sky, the man who used the contaminated bathroom earlier suddenly starts feeling extremely sick. Red blisters begin breaking out and spreading all across his skin rapidly. His breathing becomes very heavy and labored. Then, without any warning at all, one of his eyeballs suddenly bursts open, spilling blood down the side of his face. He stumbles forward in the aisle, desperately calling out for someone to help him. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Before anyone can reach him to provide assistance, he violently vomits blood all over the floor and collapses. A woman who happens to be a medical doctor rushes over immediately to help. She checks his pulse and other vital signs very carefully, then looks up at all the horrified passengers surrounding them with a pale face. She announces that the man has passed away. The entire cabin erupts in shock screams and complete panic. Passengers start looking around frantically, trying desperately to understand what just happened to this man. That's when Park notices something chilling. Ryu Jin-sok is sitting calmly in his seat with a slight smile on his face, almost like he's enjoying what's happening. Something inside Park completely snaps. He lunges across the aisle and physically attacks Ryu, screaming loudly that he's responsible for this innocent man's passing. The two men fight violently in the narrow aisle as terrified passengers watch in horror. During the intense struggle and fighting, Park manages to grab Ryu's shirt and forcefully pull it upward. Everyone nearby can now clearly see the fresh stitches under Ryu's arm where he inserted the virus capsule at the airport. Just then, co-pilot Choi Hyun-soo receives an urgent warning message in the cockpit about a credible terror threat on their flight. He immediately rushes out to the cabin to investigate what's happening. Choi finds Park and Ryu fighting each other and quickly steps between them to break it up and restore order. He looks directly at Ryu with a serious expression and asks firmly if he is Ryu Jin-sok.
유진석 씨 맞죠?
What?
생년 5일 85년 12월 1일 맞죠?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm an American citizen.
For a moment, Ryu pretends not to understand the question and acts confused. But before anyone can physically stop him, he suddenly breaks free from their grip and runs down the aisle. As he runs, he pulls out his spray container and begins spraying the deadly virus into the air throughout the entire cabin, contaminating everything. Complete chaos breaks out immediately as passengers scream and try desperately to get away from him. Eventually, several strong male passengers manage to tackle Ryu hard and pin him down on the floor. The co-pilot and flight attendants work together quickly to tie him up securely with restraints so he can't cause any more harm. Later, it's revealed through their conversation that Park and Choi actually know each other from the past, though there's clearly some bad history and tension between them that makes the situation even more uncomfortable. Then the situation begins to get much worse very quickly for everyone on board. More passengers throughout different sections of the cabin start coughing violently and showing symptoms. Even some of the crew members are beginning to fall ill. The co-pilot quickly contacts Captain Han in the cockpit through the intercom to inform him of the rapidly deteriorating situation. He reports that the other co-pilot named Jang and one of the senior flight attendants have already fallen sick with symptoms. Choi makes a very difficult but rational decision in this crisis. He will absolutely not enter the cockpit under any circumstances. If he goes in there and gets infected by the virus, they'll lose both remaining pilots. They must protect at least Captain Han so that someone capable can land the plane safely when the time comes. But the nightmare is truly only beginning for everyone trapped on board. This particular aircraft is an older model, which means the air circulation system constantly recycles the same air throughout the entire cabin instead of bringing in fresh air. This allows the deadly virus to spread even faster to every single passenger. An emergency meeting is immediately called on the ground back in Korea. Government officials, medical experts, and the transport minister all gather urgently in a crisis situation room to decide their next move. After investigating Ryu's background and history, they discover he once worked as the head of microbiology at a large pharmaceutical company called Brickham. When government officials reach out to the company requesting critical information about the virus, Brickham coldly refuses to cooperate with them at all. They claim to have absolutely no connection to the hijacking whatsoever. Time is running out rapidly as more people on the plane continue to fall sick and pass away. In-ho makes a very controversial suggestion to the gathered officials. They should try negotiating directly with Ryu Jin-sok. Perhaps they can offer him something valuable in exchange for information about the virus and how to stop it from spreading. The officials reluctantly agree it's worth trying as a last resort. They patch through a direct call to the airplane and begin speaking with Ryu, but his response is absolutely chilling and shows no humanity. Ryu says very calmly and coldly that he doesn't want anything from them at all. He simply wants everyone on this plane to pass away.
나는 여기 비행기에 탄 사람들이 전부 죽었으면 좋겠어요.
He's not trying to negotiate for money or make any demands. He's just a psychopath who wants to watch innocent people suffer. Suddenly during the call, Ryu lunges forward and tries to physically attack the co-pilot. But right at that exact moment, Ryu himself begins vomiting blood violently from his own mouth. He looks at everyone around him with a twisted, disturbing smile on his face and says that he knew he was going to go the moment he got on this flight. He never had any plans to survive this at all. He didn't create this entire terror attack for money or any political reasons. He just wanted to watch the world burn and take everyone with him. Moments later, the entire plane is thrown into absolute chaos and terror. The aircraft suddenly begins to free fall, dropping thousands of feet in just seconds. The plane shakes violently as it plummets straight downward through the sky. Passengers scream in complete terror as bags and loose items fly dangerously through the air. Some people are thrown violently from their seats. It's total panic throughout the cabin as everyone genuinely thinks they're about to crash into the ocean and pass away. In the cockpit, the horrifying truth is finally revealed to everyone. Captain Han, the main pilot, has passed away while sitting at the controls. He had unknowingly eaten a contaminated meal earlier when some of the virus powder had accidentally fallen into his food during all the chaos happening in the cabin. With the plane diving rapidly and the captain gone, co-pilot Zhang somehow manages to stumble into the cockpit despite being extremely sick himself. He grabs the controls with shaking hands and tries desperately to pull the plane out of its deadly dive, but he's far too weak. Then suddenly, Park Jae-hyuk appears in the cockpit doorway. Without any hesitation at all, he rushes forward to the controls and grabs them right alongside Zhang. Together, using every ounce of their combined strength, the two men manage to pull the heavy aircraft out of the dive. They level it off and get it flying stable again just seconds before it would have crashed into the ocean below and ended everyone's lives. A moment later, Choi and the chief flight attendant arrive at the cockpit entrance. They're absolutely shocked and surprised to see Park sitting confidently in the pilot's seat, handling the complex controls with clear expert precision and skill. It's then revealed through their conversation that Park was once a very famous and highly skilled commercial pilot. However, he had to quit flying permanently after a tragic incident that happened years ago. That incident left him with a deep psychological fear of being in the cockpit and making life or death decisions. Back on the ground at the airport, In-ho receives terrible confirmation of what's been happening up in the sky. Ryu Jin-sok has passed away from the virus he released, and Captain Han is also gone. The situation is no longer a secret that can be contained quietly. News media outlets all across the country have caught wind of the developing story and it's spreading rapidly across every television channel and news website. The transport minister has absolutely no choice now but to make an official public statement. She goes before the cameras and admits to the entire nation that there's a bioterror attack currently happening in the skies above them. On board the plane, passengers watch these same news reports on their personal phones and the seatback screens. People begin screaming and crying hysterically as the horrible reality of their situation truly sinks in. More passengers continue to collapse as the virus spreads faster. This includes the flight attendant who had cleaned the contaminated bathroom where Ryu first released the virus into the air. She falls to the floor, coughing up blood. Let me know in the comments which thriller movie I should cover next. The remaining healthy passengers make an extremely difficult decision together. They must physically separate the infected people from those who haven't shown any symptoms yet. Anyone displaying clear signs of the virus infection is told to move to the back section of the plane immediately. Everyone else is instructed to go to the front section. As Park and Soo-min prepare to move forward to the supposedly safe area, a panicked man suddenly shouts and points directly at the little girl. He yells accusingly that she has blisters all over her hands and must be infected.
잠깐만요. 이거 스포 아니에요? 무슨 소리예요? 이거 그냥 아토피예요. 스포 맞는 거 같은데. 아니라니까. 아니 그 불안하니까 뭐 진단서 같은 거 없어요?
Park quickly tries to explain that his daughter simply has eczema, which is a harmless skin condition and not the virus. But the terrified man doesn't believe him at all and other passengers start to agree. Little Soo-min, frightened by all the angry shouting, whispers sadly to her father that it's okay and they should just go to the back section. With no other choice and not wanting to cause more fear and conflict, Park reluctantly carries his daughter to the back where all the sick and dying passengers are waiting. At the Brickham Company headquarters building, In-ho and his police team arrive desperately searching for any information about the virus and whether an antidote exists. But as they reach the main entrance, a group of armed private security guards completely blocks their path. In-ho tries to reason with them calmly, explaining that hundreds of innocent lives are at stake. When the guards still refuse to move aside or let them inside, In-ho's frustration finally boils over. A physical fight breaks out between the police officers and the security team. A news reporter who happens to be nearby captures the entire violent altercation on camera. The video is immediately posted online and goes viral within just minutes. Up in the sky, the doomed plane is now approaching United States airspace. For a very brief moment, there's a small flicker of hope among the desperate passengers and crew. They believe that help is finally within reach. The advanced American medical system will surely be able to save them from this nightmare. But that fragile hope is completely crushed within minutes. The US government issues an official statement firmly denying the infected plane entry into their airspace. They declare that the virus on board is a completely unknown and unstudied strain. They absolutely cannot take any risk of allowing it onto American soil where it could potentially spread to their entire population.
A terrorist attack, your landing clearance has been denied. Until further notice, you are not permitted to land anywhere in the United States.
The crew members, the families anxiously watching from Korea, the sick and dying passengers, everyone is utterly devastated by this crushing news. They're told the plane must somehow keep flying for another 8 full hours with absolutely nowhere to land. Suddenly, another terrible blow hits everyone hard. Co-pilot Jang, who had helped save the plane from crashing earlier, suddenly collapses unconscious in the cockpit. The chief flight attendant immediately rushes to him and begins performing CPR desperately, trying to revive him and bring him back. But despite all her best efforts, it's already too late for him. He's gone. Now only Choi Hyun-soo is left, who's capable of flying the massive plane, and even he is starting to show the early symptoms of virus infection. Back on the ground, In-ho receives a surprising and completely unexpected phone call on his mobile. It's from an employee who actually works inside the Brickham company. The person wants to secretly report suspicious activities happening within the organization. The worried employee reveals something absolutely shocking. Someone inside Brickham actually helped Ryu Jin-sok obtain the deadly virus sample. That person immediately fled from the company the moment the news about the hijacked flight broke out publicly.
아무래도 지금 방송 나오는 그 류진석과 뭔가 공모를 하는 듯했어요. 오늘도 그 뉴스 나오고 바로 도망가듯이 월차 내고 집으로 가더라고요.
In-ho and his entire team race to the suspect's apartment address to arrest him before he can escape the country. When they arrive at the apartment building, the man spots the police coming and immediately jumps on his motorcycle. He speeds away down the crowded city streets at dangerous speeds. An intense high-speed chase begins through traffic with In-ho's police car following close behind. During the dangerous chase, In-ho's vehicle skids badly on a sharp turn and crashes hard into a parked car on the side of the road. But just when it seems the suspect might successfully escape, something completely unexpected happens that nobody saw coming. The man suddenly stops his motorcycle in the middle of the street and actually comes back. He helps pull In-ho and the other injured officer carefully from the badly wrecked car. Then he finally opens up and starts talking, with tears streaming down his face. He confesses that he didn't know Ryu was going to do this terrible thing. Ryu had tricked and manipulated him. He then reveals the full disturbing truth about what happened years ago. Brickham had illegally obtained a highly dangerous virus called SC1 from another country. It's an extremely contagious strain that spreads rapidly through the air. During the secret testing phase, 3 company researchers accidentally got infected with it. 2 of them passed away within just a few days. But 1 person miraculously survived the deadly infection against all odds. That lone survivor later made serious claims that Ryu Jin-sok had deliberately exposed all of them to the virus on purpose as some kind of twisted scientific experiment. To avoid a massive public scandal and potential lawsuits that would destroy the company, Brickham quietly fired Ryu and tried to cover up the entire incident. Later, Ryu contacted this employee and pretended he wanted another sample of the virus to clear his name and prove his innocence in a court. The employee, believing Ryu's convincing lies, secretly gave him access to a virus sample. Now he realizes he was completely manipulated. Meanwhile, In-ho desperately searches for the one person who survived the original SC1 infection. That survivor might hold crucial information about how to treat the virus. Back on the plane flying through the sky, the air traffic control center on the ground notices something very strange about the flight path and speed. Choi is flying the plane much faster than the normal cruising speed. They radio in and ask for an explanation of why he's going so fast. Choi's weak and strained voice comes through the radio speakers. He says he doesn't know how much longer he can physically last up here flying the plane.
혹시 항로 중에 착륙 협의가 된 것이 있습니까?
협의하고 있습니다. 무슨 일 있으신 겁니까?
제가 몸이 좀 안 좋은 것 같아서.
Everyone listening on the ground freezes in absolute horror at his words. Despite the extreme urgency of the desperate situation, the authorities still cannot find even a single runway anywhere in the entire world that's willing to accept the infected plane for landing. In-ho finally manages to track down and locate the lone survivor of the original virus infection from years ago. The woman is now living in complete isolation at a special medical facility. The virus permanently damaged her health and completely destroyed the normal life she once had. She confirms after carefully looking at photos that the virus found in the dead man's apartment is exactly the same strain that infected her all those years ago. Shortly after this crucial confirmation, government officials receive incredible news that changes everything. Brickham does actually possess both a working vaccine and an antidote for the SC1 virus. The transport minister and In-ho immediately rush to the company headquarters and forcefully demand their full cooperation in saving the flight and all the passengers.
Who are you?
Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Just cooperate.
The amazing news spreads incredibly fast across all media. When the passengers trapped on the plane hear through their phones that a cure actually exists and is available, the entire cabin erupts in joyful cheers and tears of relief. After many long hours of terror and watching innocent people pass away all around them, there's finally some real hope for survival. But unfortunately, that precious hope doesn't last very long at all. As Choi's physical condition continues to worsen rapidly with every passing minute, he makes a desperate last-chance decision. He will attempt to land the plane at Narita Airport in Japan instead of trying to fly all the way back to Korea. He genuinely fears they simply won't make it that far before he becomes too sick to control the aircraft. Choi issues an official emergency declaration to Japanese air traffic control and begins preparing the massive aircraft for descent. At the exact same time, Korean government officials are frantically calling their counterparts in Japan. They explain that they now have access to a working vaccine and antidote and beg Japan to please allow the plane to make an emergency landing on humanitarian grounds. They even get the Korean president himself to personally call Japan's prime minister and make the request. But Japan's answer is absolutely firm and final: no. They refuse to accept any risk to their own population. Now desperate and completely out of options, Choi pushes ahead with the landing attempt anyway, ignoring their warnings. Inside the cabin, passengers panic and grip their seats tightly with white knuckles as the plane begins its descent toward Japanese territory. Suddenly, unidentified objects appear outside the windows flying alongside them. They're fighter jets sent by the Japanese military as a show of force. The jets circle the commercial plane very aggressively, firing warning shots across its path to intimidate them. But Choi doesn't change course or turn back at all. Without any further warning, one of the fighter jets suddenly charges forward at full speed, heading straight for the passenger plane in a deadly game of chicken. At the very last possible second before collision, Choi yanks the controls upward with all his remaining strength. The plane pulls up sharply, barely avoiding a catastrophic mid-air collision by just a few meters. But the extreme physical exertion is far too much for Choi's weakened and sick body to handle. He immediately collapses unconscious in the pilot's seat with blood dripping from his mouth. Park doesn't hesitate for even a single second. He rushes into the cockpit and takes full control of the aircraft. There's absolutely no time to think or be afraid of his past. The crew quickly administers fever-reducing medication to Choi, hoping desperately it will hold off the virus progression just long enough for him to survive until they land. Once again, Park finds himself sitting in the pilot's seat with hundreds of innocent lives depending entirely on his skill. Soon after this incident, news stations all around the world begin heavily criticizing Japan's decision as cruel, inhumane, and selfish. Under intense international pressure and public outrage from human rights groups, Japan's prime minister finally gives an official statement to explain their controversial actions. He claims that new scientific information shows the virus on the plane has mutated and changed significantly. It now spreads much faster than originally predicted, and the antidote might not even work anymore on this new mutated strain. He says he had an obligation to protect Japanese citizens and truly had no other choice. When the passengers hear this absolutely devastating announcement, their hearts sink once again into complete despair. The officials watching helplessly from the ground also feel totally defeated. With absolutely no other options remaining at all, the plane slowly turns towards Seoul Air Base in Korea. But now, even some Korean government officials have begun to seriously hesitate about whether to allow it to land. After hearing that the antidote might fail against the mutated virus, they start wondering if letting the plane land would risk the entire country's population getting infected. One official quietly suggests in the meeting that maybe it's better to sacrifice a few hundred people than to risk millions of citizens getting infected and passing away. But In-ho absolutely refuses to give up any hope at all. His beloved wife is on that plane, and he will do absolutely anything to save her life. He decides to take an enormous personal risk that could end his own life. In-ho goes directly to the quarantine medical facility and volunteers himself as a test subject for the untested antidote. By the time the transport minister arrives to try to stop him, In-ho is already lying in a hospital bed, violently throwing up blood as the virus attacks his body. The doctors quickly administer the experimental antidote and everyone watches his condition anxiously. But several long minutes pass and In-ho's condition only seems to get worse instead of better. He falls completely unconscious and his vital signs begin failing rapidly. The antidote doesn't appear to be working at all. Meanwhile, Park's plane is getting closer and closer to Seoul with every passing minute. But news of the dangerous situation spreads rapidly across the entire country. Angry and terrified protesters begin gathering in massive crowds throughout Korea, demanding the plane stay away. Then comes the absolute worst possible news imaginable. Thousands of people have physically blocked the runway at Seoul Air Base with their own bodies and vehicles. The plane cannot possibly land there safely now. When the passengers hear this final piece of devastating news, they are emotionally crushed and broken. Many begin crying uncontrollably, knowing their fate is completely sealed now. But then, the passengers collectively make an incredibly painful decision together. For the safety of their families, their friends, and their entire country, they choose not to land the plane at all. The chief flight attendant gently brings little Soo-min to her father in the cockpit. The brave little girl says softly through her tears that she thinks it's better if they don't land. She doesn't want her friends at school to get sick because of her. The chief attendant continues with her voice breaking with emotion. She explains that everyone on board has talked about it together and made their decision. They're all infected now and won't risk infecting others on the ground. Park turns on the plane's communication system and speaks directly to the entire nation listening below. His voice is calm but incredibly heavy with sorrow as he tells them they have chosen not to land for everyone's safety. He says they understand the fear completely and this is the only thing they can do now. Then he adds that they will cut off all radio communications and this is their final goodbye.
This is Sky Korea 501. Good day.
Inside the air traffic control center, every single person bows their heads in grief. On the plane, passengers take out their phones one last time. They begin calling their families and loved ones, leaving final goodbye messages and telling people how much they love them. People on the ground look up at the sky with tears streaming down their faces, watching the plane slowly disappear into the distant clouds. But just when all hope seems completely lost forever, something miraculous happens. In-ho suddenly opens his eyes in the hospital bed. His breathing has stabilized completely. The heart monitor shows his vital signs are rapidly improving. Against all odds, the antidote has actually worked. He survived. The transport minister immediately gives a direct order: contact that plane right now and tell them to come back. But there's a serious problem they didn't anticipate. Park already shut down all radio communications from the cockpit as he promised. The control tower cannot reach them no matter how many times they try calling. So the desperate team reaches out to all the passengers' families, begging them to try calling their loved ones on the plane to pass along this incredible life-saving news.
비행기와 교신이 안 되니 어서 가족들에게 얘기해 주세요. 돌아오라고요.
A few tense minutes later, Park finally gets the message through multiple phone calls. He confirms the unbelievable information with the airbase control tower. This time, they are officially cleared to land. Permission is finally granted. Cheers and tears of pure joy fill every corner of the cabin. After everything they've suffered through, the survivors are finally going home. The angry protesters hear the news about the working antidote and slowly begin clearing away from the runway. But there's one more critical problem they must face. The plane is almost completely out of fuel. The engines could shut down at any moment. Their only option is to glide down without engine power. The control center suggests Suwon Airfield, but Park studies the map carefully and chooses Songnam Airfield instead. They warn him the runway might be too short, but Park trusts his experience. Before descending, Park tells Choi he's sorry about the past. Choi says he would have done the same thing. Park switches off the engine and circles the airfield to reduce speed. At the perfect moment, he begins the descent. The plane shakes violently. Park grips the controls and slams onto the runway. The landing gear screams but holds. They made it safely. In the aftermath, survivors gather at a reunion. Soo-min walks beside her father as life slowly returns to normal. In-ho, who risked everything, is now permanently paralyzed from the virus. But his sacrifice gave everyone a second chance at life.